Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
I hear high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham, Scott alongside. As always, hello, Scott.
Hi, Sean. How are you today?
I'm doing well, but I do want to apologize to you, Scott.
Oh, wow. There's so many things that this could be for.
So 2021 marks the 150th anniversary of the Meteorological Service of Canada, and they are in the midst of a bit of a celebration. There's a website where you can read about major meteorological milestones. There's even a get to know our meteorological people section, which is mostly retired folks for some reason. But I neglected to wish you a happy 150th anniversary. So my apologies. Scott, tell the people how you are celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Meteorological Service of Canada.
Well, Sean, I celebrate privately.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I came across that today. I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of initiatives going on with MSC right now to promote that, and I think meteorologists deserve a lot more credit than we get. People say you're always wrong. Well, that's not true. So when it's nice and sunny and we predicted that, nobody cares.
Right. That's
and when
true.
it's raining and we predicted it, nobody cares.
Well, they
only
happy.
care when you get it
people
wrong.
aren't happy when it's raining usually.
No, but at least they know and can plan.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, that's enough of that.
Yeah. So just wanted to point that one out, Scott, because not too much to talk about off of the gold medal game last night at the Canadian Mixed Doubles Curling Championship out in the bubble in Calgary, the last purely Curling Canada event that would take place in the bubble. The two World Championships will be run by the folks at Curling Canada, but this is the last domestic championship that we are having. So, Scott, let's talk about it, and let's start right there. We got new mixed doubles champions that will be going off to Scotland to compete in the World Championship next month. Brad Gushue, Kerri Einarson, they said it couldn't be done. Well, I don't know who they are other than me. Two skips couldn't come together to win this thing, and Scott, they did.
They did. Yeah, not excuse me, not bad, right? But I don't know what it says about mixed doubles, Sean, that these two skips can come in. Obviously great shot makers, great players, and just sort of run roughshod over the field. It did seem like Brad hurt himself from sweeping. I don't know. What's your thoughts on this team as champions?
So I think it basically comes down to a couple things here. One is shot making. Obviously, you have to be excellent shot makers, and I don't think anyone would argue that Brad Gushue and Kerri Einarson are not excellent shot makers. They've each won multiple national championships with their 4-people teams. And the other thing that I think this really highlighted is that execution is way more important in mixed doubles, at least, than strategy necessarily. I want to talk about strategic decisions in mixed doubles because you don't have the same diversity of shots. The ends don't have the same differences between them in the way they set up. And so it really just comes down to who's going to make the most shots. And these two people are going to do it. And when you look at mixed doubles, I think that's why you can have teams that don't play together a lot come in and be successful. When Courtney and Carruthers came together, I believe that was just for that season back in 17 to get Canada the spot in the 2018 Olympics. Of course, famously, John Morris, Caitlin Laws come together for a one-time only situation. and that works out. Now we have Gushue and Einarson that come together. Walker and Myers, when they won, that was the first time they had played mixed doubles together. So you don't need to build the same level of cohesiveness and continuity that you need in the 4-person game, where strategy and communication up and down the sheet is a lot more important than in the mixed doubles, perhaps.
Yes. But at the same time, what I think the Gushue and Einarson combination showed us was that Brad was very good at deferring to what Kerri wanted to throw.
Yeah.
So I think their communication was really good. Given they only have a little while to play together, it's those are the good principles of communication, right? The other teams that we saw get to the end of the tournament were also good at communicating.
Mm-hmm.
So that's so important in this kind of game.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about it. The whole strategy of this, because the thing that I noticed over the course of the week is that in the 4-person game, everyone, the good teams always defer to the skip, especially when it's their turn to throw. It's what are you seeing? What do you want to throw? And the skip is able to call to what they want to throw, whatever that is, especially late in the game. If they're feeling hit, if they're feeling draw, they can try to cater the end to get to a point to throw the shot that they want to throw. Of course, the other team is trying to make it so that they can't throw that shot that they want to throw. But it's all, the person calling the game is also the one throwing that last rock. And what we've saw over the course of the week is that oftentimes the individual throwing the 3 in the middle seemed to be the one calling the game as well. And there wasn't that same deference to the last rock thrower throughout the end to try to build to that one shot that person had the most confidence in. And the best example that I could think of this off the top of my head was the game between Lisa Weigel, John Epping, when they played Val Sweeting and Mark Kennedy in that last end, where Val was concerned about peeling the center guard, about basically because she wasn't sure what her last one was going to be. And they were short on time, which didn't help things. But basically Mark, knowing that he had to go fast and he felt the peel was the right move. But in a 4-person game, if the person throwing last was as uncomfortable as Val seemed to be in that moment, I think everyone takes a step back and says, okay, well, what do you see? What do you want to throw at the end? And we didn't see that quite as much this week for the last rock throwers.
That's a really good example of where the lack of positive communication really hurt the team. That's also likely due to the fact that they were low on time.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Which doesn't help, right? Which is maybe when you're overthinking things a little bit too much earlier in the game, you can get into a point where you're losing time towards the end. We saw that in another game this week where I think it was Caitlin Laws and Connor Laws, where they changed the call when Caitlin was in the hack and there was something like 25 seconds left. So she didn't have time to go down, see it, visualize it the same way that she would likely in the 4-person game, given that the strategy is a little more rote in that format. That said, I really like the differences between the two games. I just wish that not that worse players would win, but that
specialists. You want specialists to win.
Defend your turf, specialists, right? Like this is your turf.
Yeah, well, okay, to be fair, I would say out of the final 4 teams there, so out of those 8 players, Sahaidik and Lott, they're obviously specialists, I think, at this point in their careers. Yes. I know Colton Lott plays with Tanner Horgan, but from all accounts, he devotes more of his time to the mixed doubles game. And I believe Sahaidik is the same in that regard.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I don't care what John Morris says. He's a mixed double specialist at this point. And actually, he might even say that. I think John Morris counts as a specialist. And I think Danielle would count as a specialist too. She seems to play a lot more mixed doubles than anything else. And okay, Laura Walker, probably not. Certainly Einarson and Gushue, definitely not. Kirk Myers, he maybe 50-50 on whether he would qualify as a specialist or not.
I think if you asked him, he'd rather win the Brier than win this.
Probably.
So,
but you did have good performances by people who are specialists, and Peterman and Gallant, I think they could fall into sort of that either or category. Obviously, more to the 4-person team, especially with Gallant and the success they've had over the past few years. But I do think the specialists did okay.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, most of the specialists are worse curlers. Objectively, not as good shot makers, we'll say, not worse curlers, but shot makers. And we talked about that in our preview, Sean, that probably the teams with the better players were going to be the teams that won. And of the 12 that advanced from out of pool play, 10 of them were non-provincial representatives.
Right.
And of those, that means that they're curlers that mostly play at the high level in 4-person games as well, except maybe the examples you've already mentioned.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see over the next couple of years more people shift towards specialists and specializing in mixed doubles. The Catlin Schneiders of the world, for instance, who have had success at this event in the past. Like I said, John Morris, and they were pretty clear on this week that the arrangement with Cooey is to try to get to the Olympics, and then we'll see. So he'll be back basically full time mixed doubles after this cycle if he wants to continue to play. So I do think that the days of the Tucks and the Desjardins ruling the Canadian mixed doubles championship, that's probably over. But again, I think it does reflect that mixed doubles is way more about shot making than the communication or strategy, although those things are important, certainly. But it really does come down to having two really good shot makers who can communicate in a way that is, at the very least, not damaging to the shot making ability.
Yeah. And well, another problem with, I don't want to be complaining all day, Sean, but another problem with having, people come from the 4-person game into the mixed doubles for an event like this is that those teams aren't playing mixed doubles on a sort of mixed doubles tour, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the teams that are getting beat in this kind of an event, they don't have the chance to play those teams that are beating them on a regular basis and get better.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Because these super teams, quote unquote, they just swoop down, play in the national championship, win, and then the teams who are specialists who play all the time, I mean, if they want to get better at mixed doubles, they likely have to go to Europe.
Yes, they would.
And then even that, I don't know if that gives you enough of an advantage over, say, two players like Gushue and Einarson.
No, but I don't know what you can do to be better than them. They're two of the best shot makers in the world. And put them together, they're going to beat you.
Yeah, but they're great shot makers because they've had the chance to play a lot against high level competition. And if your focus is only on mixed doubles, you don't get the chance to play against that high level competition.
That feels very chicken and egg to me. Like, what makes you good? Playing against other people or being good? And then because you're good, you get to play against other good people. Like I don't know.
I mean, you have to have a level of talent, sure, but I can't imagine anybody would disagree that Brad Gushue is a better curler because he gets to go to the Brier every year than if he wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think that argument is not as relevant as it was 25 years ago, where you can play on tour, you can get into the slams. The one of the reasons I don't think Curling Canada needs to change the Brier Scotties format is because for developmental purposes, there are so many other venues now that there weren't in the past. So yeah, when Brad Gushue was coming up, all those trips to the Briar over and over again, for sure, no question. But in today's day and age, I'm not as convinced that that's as true. I do think that the best venues in Canada right now to play are the 4-person events. So yes, you probably do need to play on a 4-person team to get access to the best ice, to the best competition. But I don't know if that's necessarily sort of a product of going to the Briar or going to the Scotties or anything like that. Like, be good, play in the events, and just continue to develop that way.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, is that if you apply those same principles to a mixed doubles team, right, who only plays mixed doubles, be good, play mixed doubles, play against the best mixed doubles team, sure. But then you come to the championships and like, oh, 2 of the best skips in the world of the 4-person game are going to come and beat us. Yeah. And we don't ever have a chance to play against them other than in this event.
Yeah, so I guess that does sort of lead to a question of, what do we want mixed doubles to be in this country? Do we want it to be, as I think it is right now, the sort of little younger sibling to the Briar and the Scotties, that is almost a backup for teams when they lose the trials at the 4-person? Then okay, we'll go try the mixed doubles trials. Or do we want it to be its own discipline? Because I mean, mixed doubles internationally, one of the reasons why the World Curling Federation is pushing it is that it's easier to grow the game in mixed doubles around the world than with the 4-person game. And in Canada, does that same principle apply? Is mixed doubles going to be that venue? Because for as much as some people don't like to admit it, we do need to grow the game domestically as well in terms of participation at the grassroots level. And is a defined, clear mixed doubles specialization with a clear path to provincial, national, potentially international championships that is only accessible through mixed doubles, is that going to be the path forward for curling Canada? And then we'll have a clear divide between, you got to pick your lane. Are you 4-person or are you mixed doubles? And that's sort of where the discussion is going to go, I think, in the next cycle, especially if Canada doesn't do well in the Olympics.
Yeah, and I think that, like, for me, right now, mixed doubles is plan B if we don't make the Olympics. Straight out for elite level curlers, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you disagree?
No, 100%.
Yeah, it's, oh, well, I didn't make the Olympics with my 4-person team. I'm going to play mixed doubles and try to do that, which I think is not good for the sport of curling overall in Canada. I think it's much more helpful to grow the sport, to have a second discipline that you can participate in. If, say, you live somewhere where it's hard to get 4 people together, hard to get 4 people who are dedicated together. It's like a fun, quick game. I'm sure that the younger people might enjoy it more than, a 2.5 hour 8-end game that you're playing at the curling club, because people don't know how to play fast, versus this is like a quick little hour and a half.
Yeah.
So I say the younger people, like I'm a million years old,
man.
But, yeah, I after watching this week, I feel more strongly that a specialization would not necessarily be better in the short term for mixed doubles, but I think in the long term, it would be better.
Okay. I do think that there could be a ripple effect to the grassroots level, where if mixed doubles is seen as a real serious discipline on its own, separate from the 4-person game, then it could give more traction at the grassroots level to people to pick it up, as opposed to right now, certainly in the area where we live, Scott. And so I obviously can't speak for the whole country. Certainly in the Ottawa Valley region, there are spiels, double spiels, sometimes Scotch doubles, sometimes mixed double spiels, but they're usually viewed as like one-off fun events, something different, as opposed to real ways to get people into the facilities to play more. And clubs, again, locally for us, don't want to turn over ice to mixed doubles regularly over the course of a season And we do know that facilities are struggling across the country. They're going to have to bring people in. I think that is the way to do it. And yeah, potentially if there's this almost professionalization of the mixed doubles game at the national and then international level, well, maybe it's already there at the international level outside of Canada, maybe with some countries, then maybe you have a ripple effect down grassroots. But what we'll see. I really do believe that there is a lot of hope for the future of grassroots curling in this format.
Yeah, and I'm not saying there's no place for elite players in this game. Of course not. But somebody like John Morris, yeah, he can decide, hey, you know what, mixed doubles, that's for me. And he's a great player, has been a great player in the 4-player game for sure. But now he's decided something else is more important, right? And so we might see in the next quadrennial, who knows, if maybe in the women's side they see, okay, there's like 2 or 3 teams. There's Homan, there's Einarson. Do we think any of them is going to lose the Olympics? Maybe my best shot is to dedicate my time to mixed doubles. Like maybe Chelsea Kerri decides mixed doubles is what I'm going to focus on now. She's not old. She's 35 or 36. But does she have more to prove in the 4-person game?
Yeah. I think she wants to win a world championship.
Well, wouldn't we all like to win a world championship?
Yeah, but you know what the difference between you and Chelsea Kerri is in that regard? She has a chance.
She has a chance, yeah.
But it is an interesting discussion to think about, sort of the ramifications of this moving forward and what this all means over the course of the next cycle. And of course, it is prompted by the fact that Kerri Einarson and Brad Gushue did win this last night. So Scott, let's talk about, I think that game last night, there's not really too much to unpack. I got away pretty early from Sahaidik and Lott. The real only turning point that I could think of in terms of decision making, obviously in the third end or the fourth end, the steal of 4 was not great in terms of execution, but in terms of strategy, the first end, there was a chance for 4 for Sahaidik and Lott. They had the hammer and it was a thin double, but it was there for 4, or they had a shot the other side coming on the intern side for a right-hand thrower for potentially 2. So Scott, did you like that decision to go for the 4 early when perhaps you might have had an easier shot to try for 2?
Well, I think when they're playing against this level of an opponent that's been so hot the last 4 or 5 games, why not go for it, right? Yeah. It's the first end. Even if you give up a steal of 1, which ended up happening, you're likely to have more chances in this game. In mixed doubles, it's not as big of a deal to give up a steal as in the 4-person game, I'd say, because you're going to get the opportunities. And when those opportunities present themselves against a team this good, you got to take it. And so I don't fault them at all going for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. You go for the 4. No, there's no question, right? It's in this format, especially against those 2 players, you could give up a 4 right back. So you have a chance to score a big end, especially early in the game, with no risk to yourself. There was no chance of, Einarson and Gushue were already sitting 1. There was no chance you were going to give up more than 1. So there's no risk to it in that regard. You missed the other shot, you're giving up 1 too. So go for the one that's going to give you the bigger number. And absolutely. Yeah, just unfortunately, I believe it undercurled. She hit it too thick, the top one. So an unfortunate miss there. And then, as I said, in 4, the steal of 4, that kind of put the game out of reach. They do get a 4 and 7, which is kind of crazy to think about, that you would see that Kerri Einarson, really tough miss in the 7th end on her last one, sort of went through the hole. She was trying for a double, made contact with both of them, but so thin that neither of them went out of the rings. I think that was the only miss she had, certainly in the playoffs that I saw.
Wow,
Kerri
Sean.
Einarson. Yeah,
I turned the game off, so I didn't even see it.
Yeah, Facing 3. So Heidek and Lott had 3 in the house, and it was a double that you would expect Kerri Einarson to make, I don't know, 97 times out of 100. And you would expect her to at least remove one of the 2 stones 99 times out of 100. And she just got both of them super thin. And it was just happened to be in the middle of the house, and neither of them got out of play. So made the last end a little more interesting. Kerri didn't have to throw her last one in the 8th. Gushue made a double on his last 2 win.
And I assume they used their power play.
Power play. Yeah, they did. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so Heidek and Lott used theirs early in the 5th. Only got a single out of it, unfortunately for them. But good.
Yeah,
it was a good idea to use it in the 5th. They had to generate points.
Mm-hmm.
So elsewhere, Scott, let's talk about the playoff format. We talked about it in the preview. We talked about it when we stacked on Sunday. Now that we've seen it in place, what did you think?
Hate it.
Why?
Well, I don't know. The whole seeding games were like, I didn't watch them because who cares, right?
Uh-huh.
I didn't like. I don't know if I said this when we did our preview, because maybe I was just like, oh, I'm interested in trying something new. But you go from like single elimination to single elimination to then we're just playing for positioning, who cares, and then into the page. Like I really didn't like it, and I thought it disadvantaged a bit the first 4 teams that had like the first bye.
Okay.
Because for them, like, okay, I just lost 1 game and now I'm done. Like and to have gone like, Myers and Walker, they made it into the seeding thing. But I find it really hard to have lost, 1 game all week and then whoops, now I'm out. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it was the case for everyone that you lose 1 game, and the top 4 teams only had to play 1, whereas the other teams had to play 2. So I did think if you're going to go with this type of format, it does reward the top teams good enough for me. And again, the consideration that I always think about if I'm curling Canada, and this is something that I think they do think about, is that they want to replicate as much as possible what the World Curling Federation does at international events. And the World Curling Federation has single elimination. So you want to replicate that in some form so that your teams are, in theory, prepared for it. So I don't really have that much of a problem for it. And I thought Jeff Salmons sent us a really interesting way to think about it that hadn't occurred to me. He said that basically once you get into the 4, it's a double elimination tournament. Without the if necessary game at the end. So I thought that was a kind of a fun way to think about it. That made a little more sense to me. I didn't like the seeding games for the page. I thought that was kind of silly. Just use the rankings you already have. But other than that, I thought I'm not crazy about it. But again, given the desire that exists to prepare teams for what they're going to see internationally, I think it makes sense.
I mean, I guess in that context, yes. The other way I was thinking of doing it, which would be simpler, would be to run just a straight up double elimination tournament. Now it's not as good for TV, right? Because you don't have predictable matchups. Yep. But I mean, if you want somebody to like not lose any games, then that's kind of what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but again, it's the TV side of it. The amount of time that takes, it takes a lot more time to run that. So, and then how many teams are you letting into that? 8?
No, I don't mean for the playoffs, Sean.
Oh, for the whole thing.
Event.
The whole thing's a double elimination.
Do a 32 team, 36 team, whatever.
God, then you'll never get Vic there.
Well, don't. Vic went home. It's fine. Or maybe you do. Let's say you have 32 teams You do 4 double knockout brackets to get to 4 teams left. And then you do a page with that, or you do another double knockout with those 4 teams, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could, but again, they're going to just take the lead from the WCF. This is what the WCF does.
Yeah, and well, the other thing is, I think having 35 teams at this event was pretty ridiculous.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of teams, right?
Yep.
So I don't know what was at the Worlds, 28 one year.
Yeah, 4 pools of 7, I believe.
Yeah. I mean,
or even 32.
Yeah.
I think they did 32 one year and then got down to 16 for the playoffs.
Yeah, that sounds right. Right.
4 pools of 8.
So anyway, I just wonder if it could be better, like a better outcome for some of the top teams that performed all week. And you had, I also didn't like the tie breaking on last stone draw.
All right. Yeah, that's the next thing on my rundown. We saw first time in a major event that I can recall, a team in Canada, a team eliminated through last stone draw. I'm sure it's happened at a mixed doubles before, but this was the first time that the mixed doubles championship was on its own as sort of the standalone. Nothing else in the world of curling, a couple of international events, but really this was the only major event going on in the world of curling this week. So for the first time for a lot of folks, you see teams eliminated on last stone draw. This happens internationally at the World Championships. This could, if not likely to happen next week at the men's. And I don't know. I sort of go back and forth on this. Like, do you need a full tiebreaker game to eliminate teams? Or do you go with what's been done all week? And there's a skill to the last stone draw. You played 6 games, so you had 12 shots. Each player throws one before the game. I don't know. Is that a better representation of who played better all week than a tiebreaker game? I think you might be able to make a case that, yeah, it is.
Sure. I guess, in soccer, they solve games with 5 guys shooting at the net from super close. That is very hard to stop. Is that representative of who played the best soccer game? Probably not. And so, yeah, I mean, like, there's no skill. Like, I guess there's skill, but there's no thinking in last stone draw.
No.
I don't know. Maybe what you could do is a format like in golf, right, where you set the cut line and you say, based on the results of the week, once it comes out, right, you take the top 12 and ties, and then what happens is it's just 4 teams don't get buys. Like, it's just go down the list, right?
And so you just go like,
so maybe 3 teams get a buy, maybe 2 teams get a buy.
Okay. What if you get to like 17 teams? Yeah, right.
Then 1 team gets a buy and you start with a round of 16.
And then you have 9 teams.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I don't actually know what the best answer to that is. And again, I don't know. Like, Curling Canada is going to go with this, right? And the other thing to remember too is that at the Brier and the Scotties, a tiebreaker game can generate revenue. At the mixed doubles, especially this year, it can't. So not having a tiebreak kind of makes sense in that regard, and that it's not going to generate you any more revenue. And it is all about TV and to a certain extent. So it is unfortunate to lose out on a last stone draw. I do like that going into it, that is what was laid out to the teams. I think it would be much less fair to get to a tie break and say, oh my goodness, we have so many teams. All right, now we're just going to use last stone draw to get rid of you. At least they knew going into it. So I agree that tiebreaker games are probably ideal to just say, all right, who's moving forward. But in this type of a situation, again, following where the World Curling Federation is going with this, I don't have a major problem with it.
And I guess I'd like to hear maybe what the curlers have to say after giving them some truth serum, right? Like,
Right.
not under the cameras of Curling Canada pointing at them, but off the record, what do they really think of this format? And it's really hard because you're not playing everybody, right? So you have to use some even way to compare.
Yep.
So, I mean, maybe this should all just be last stone draw and forget about the actual games, right? Like, anyway.
All right. So, Scott, let's talk about the elimination that got the most attention this week. Joanne Courtney and Darren Molding. I don't know if it counts as an elimination, but they had to withdraw. Darren Molding's back didn't go out. Spasms was what was officially reported, and Darren himself in some social media posts said that it was back spasms. Says that he's okay now. He was wearing a Rocky Top Open Bonspiel t-shirt when we saw him last night. Shout out to our friends out in Knoxville. And Scott, so it seemed like it was preventative so that he would be okay for the men's worlds. Kind of sucked for Joanne Courtney, but of course she very much understands and gets the situation and why this had to happen. But it did get a lot of attention. Scott, do you think that had Darren Molding not been injured and unable to compete, do you think that they would have had a chance to win this?
I mean, yeah. I think they come out of their pool, right?
They were in good shape.
Because, I mean, Brittany Tran and Aaron Sluchinski came out at 4-2. Molding and Courtney already had 3 wins. Probably they come out of that pool, and are they better than Sahaydak and Lott and Peterman Gallant? I wouldn't say they are. So they would have had a chance for sure, but I mean, who knows, right? You saw, I mean, I think that the biggest surprise of the playoff round was Lang and Jones getting blown out.
They got blown out good.
I think I was surprised that it took them till the end of the third end to move.
Yeah, I thought after 2 they would go, but maybe that's just a little
nothing after 2.
I mean, it's just a little respect for the 2 of them.
Well, respect is respect, but come on, we got a lot of games to choose from here.
Yeah, that was a bit of an unfortunate turn of events for Lang and Jones in that game. I almost tweeted that it's too bad nobody told him that the game started at 12:30. But I mean, that happens sometimes. We saw that with Brad Gushue in the last game of the round robin of the championship bowl of the Brier. You just don't have it some days, it happens.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I also want to talk, Scott, you mentioned the provincial reps. The best record for provincial rep was 4-2. 3 provincial reps did that. You had Brittany Tran, Aaron Sluchinski from Alberta. That might get an asterisk because they got a free win on the ledger from the Molding and Courtney defaults. So they went 3-2 in the games they played. You also had the Newfoundland and Labrador team of Mackenzie Mitchell and Greg Smith. They go 4-2. They get into the playoffs. And then Quebec, Felix Asselin and Laurie Saint-Georges, they go 4-2. They get bumped on the last stone draw. But the provincial reps collectively did not have a good record. If you take all of them, the provincial and territorial reps didn't have a great record. Generally speaking, they're at the bottom of the table. Best record for any provincial rep at 4-2. But Scott, I do think we want to keep, or at least I want to keep, the provincial reps in this. Make sure that it is a national championship. I don't think it's, you make a case at a Brier or Scotties. I don't think it's a strong case personally, but people can make a case if they want at the Brier and the Scotties. Something like this, if you're going to have this many teams, let in all the provincial and territorial reps would be my position.
Yes.
Despite what the records are.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And maybe, I don't know, maybe someday somebody says, hey, instead of playing 4-person, I'm going to go and enter my provincial playdown in mixed doubles and try to get there.
Yeah, you did that.
Like, I did. Yeah. I made the playoffs, but
playoffs.
Yeah, it's you got to keep them there for sure.
A couple other things I've noted here, Scott. Trends over the course of the week. We already talked about communication. The other one that I noted was the shot selection overall. I think mixed doubles does suffer a little bit from being somewhat rote, particularly early in the game and early in ends. The first few shots you don't really have to think about. You're doing the same thing all the time because the initial setup is the same all the time. So you don't get a chance to see ends progress in different ways. But it did lead me to this question of, I think that mixed doubles is fantastic to play. It's super fun. It's fast paced. You look up at, and it feels like you've been out there for 5 minutes and, oh my God, it's the sixth end. How is this happening? Like it's super fun, super engaging. And I would probably be okay if one of the nights that I play in a 4-person team was shifted to mixed doubles, even if it wasn't necessarily like a mixed doubles. Like if they said, hey, men's night, you guys are playing doubles now in this format, like, great, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But I'm not sold on it as a TV product yet because of that. I know it's fast. I know that they like that the games are shorter, but I'm not sold that it's the greatest TV product. What do you think?
I think it's really good on TV, and I think the order of events might have an effect on how people perceive it, right? So you and I and all of us, we just came off 2 weeks of watching 4-person curling.
Yep.
Where we're sort of used to that rhythm, and then we get to this and it's different, and for me it's refreshingly different because we're not seeing the blank end, we're not seeing super open ends being played. Everything is to there, and when you say it's rote in that, okay, the shot is always the draw and the freeze, the angles at which the rocks are frozen matter a lot, and it's that I find is interesting, right? To see how they build up, what each team is thinking about. Okay, if we do this and we leave something here, like we'll have another thing on the other side. So that kind of strategy I find is really interesting, and I liked how TSN kept the mic on the non-throwing team sometimes this week.
Yeah, they did a good job with that.
Right. So yeah, great job by the sound people there, trying to like show us that, oh, the team that's not throwing is already thinking the next or 2 or 3 shots ahead, right? So I really liked that aspect of the TV broadcast. The other thing I like is that it's showing men and women competing together at a high level, and I think that's important. I think you and I both love watching women's curling. You've said many times you like it, you prefer it more to the Brier.
Yep. Scotty's is my favorite event of the year for sure.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. And part of it might be that it's the first one, so it's, we're not burnt out on curling yet. Part of it might be that the women are better TV characters, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I think
more likable.
No, I think TV character, and I not in like a negative connotation of like character, but when you're on TV for a week, even though you're an athlete, to a certain extent, what we see at home is a character of you. It's not you as a full human being, because the 3 hours that you're playing and you're in this competitive sphere, you're not yourself. You're professional athlete you. So that's why I like to use the word character when describing perceptions of players from TV, because it's not them as people. It's not even close to them as people.
No, exactly. So I just really like that we have a man and a woman competing, and they're very equal, right? They're playing the same game against each other, with each other. And I think that's really good for curling. I don't know how to say it other than that, but I think it's just really, really good.
Yeah. I agree on that side of it, that it is fun to see different people coming together, right? People who, you get used to the same teams over and over again. So it is nice to see different combinations of folks out there. And it was fun too when you saw 4-person teammates play each other. It didn't happen very frequently, but that's kind of a fun wrinkle to it as well. The thing I would say just about as a TV product is that I know, Scott, our mom says that she'll go right to third rocks when they PVR the game and don't watch the early ones. I find the early rocks way more interesting in the 4-person game than in this. Like, this is one that I could jump to, like, the last 4 rocks combined, so the last 2 rocks for each team of an end, and feel like I sort of got it.
It just depends on the end. I think in the 4-person game, there's a lot more ends where I can skip those rocks, especially in the men's game.
Okay, interesting. So the other thing, Scott, you mentioned blank ends. I do have the stats on blank ends from this week. Do you want to know what they are?
Oh, me too.
Okay. Do you know who led the field in blank ends?
I'm looking at the stats. Danielle Schmiemann and John Morris, and that was in the game the 1-2 game, right?
Yeah, it was against Walker and Myers.
Oh, in the semifinal.
Yeah.
No.
Well, Walker and Myers have one as like the non-hammer team. They have one on their ledger too.
Yeah. When did they play them?
Great question. But so while you look that up, it's just interesting that, over the course of the week, we had one blank end in that game. And I still believe, so the rule in mixed doubles is that if you blank, you lose the hammer, which some people have suggested could be a solution to the excess blank ends that you occasionally saw at the Briar. But I do think it creates too much of an incentive for open ends from the team without the hammer, which I don't think would be great. The reason why it's not as heavily incentivized for the team without the hammer here is because there's already a center guard and the opponent's rock is already behind that center guard. So it's a lot harder to, and you can't remove a stone for your first 2. So it really makes it difficult to play open when there are 6 stones in play before you can remove anything. So unless we want to go to a you can't remove rock situation wherever it is, like what we have in mixed doubles in the 4-person game, then the incentive right now is too much in the 4-person game. So I think that's an issue here. But that's it's kind of interesting just to go through the stats there and see one blank end over the course of a week.
Yeah, so I actually was curious about this because it was in the page seating,
okay,
which happened on Wednesday, and I that's the one I didn't watch, and it was the last end.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the score was 6-5, and I did wonder what happened. I haven't gone back to watch. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
Crazy.
Madness. I guess a
weird,
wild stuff. Rollout and a hit or something.
Yeah. Usually it would be an XX, right? But
no, that counts as if all the stones are thrown.
Then
it counts as a blank.
There you go.
So there you have that. So just go sort of a fun thing. I didn't watch those page sheeting games either. I felt that was a draw I could take off, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, got some traction last night. The Olympics. Kathy Gushue said that she is offended that Canada did not qualify for the Olympics yet. Brian seemed upset too. And this is something that I thought was just interesting as a notion. It didn't come up during the Briar, the Scotties really at all, that the World Championships are basically Olympic qualification. It certainly came up last night. I don't know necessarily why they're upset or why Kathy was so strong in saying that she was offended to not be in. I'd be interested to get more information on where that comes from. Yes, Canada did medal a couple of years ago in 2019, and John Morris and Caitlin Laws won in 2018, but the qualification process was set out after the Olympics in 2018. 2019 didn't count towards it, and I don't think you can retroactively say, oh, well, now it counts. So that was just a point of discussion. I don't like it, and I do think that the 2-year process is the best way to qualify teams for the Olympics. But for this year, this makes the world championship a lot more fun to me.
Yeah, for sure. I wondered if there's any other sports where defending Olympic champions get automatic bids into the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I don't know, right? But
I'd be surprised because the teams are different. Like the reps are different usually.
Yeah, but but it doesn't matter. Like the reps could be different for this qualifying process that are going to go to the Olympics, you know?
Yeah, but I think but that's why you don't have it. Why you don't have repeat champions automatically in, because it might not be that the person who won.
Yeah, I know it wouldn't be the champion, but it would be the association.
Yeah, but
the country.
But okay, here's what I'll say: the American men's Olympic basketball team and the women's basketball teams too, which generally are going to win the gold medal all the time, almost usually all the time. They have to qualify for the Olympics. They don't get automatic entry. And if the IOC was going to give, and I know it's not IOC who gives Olympic qualification, it's up to the member associations and the sport governing bodies. But I mean, the IOC wants the American basketball teams in the Olympics. They make them money. So if they're not if they make the Americans go to some basketball event and beat up on the Canadians, then and somebody can correct us on that. But yeah, I think having to go through qualify, the Olympic spirit is really just a marketing play at this point, but that's part of it, is that everyone has a chance. And
yeah, and the same with like World Cup soccer.
Yeah. Every
country has to qualify.
Yeah. Canada beat Bermuda last night, I saw.
Hey,
in a World Cup qualifier.
It seemed last night almost like they forgot that there was no curling last year.
Right.
Like,
because they kept saying last year.
Canada likely would have already qualified for this event.
Likely.
Had the season unfolded last year. Likely. Not for sure, but likely. And if they hadn't, just because they hadn't performed, I wonder if you would say the same thing. I'm offended that Canada doesn't have have a spot. Well, you can't be, because the team that went to the Worlds didn't perform well enough to merit anything. Yeah. So anyway,
yeah. So I was surprised by that. But it doesn't diminish my eternal love of Kathy Gauthier. I was just surprised. That's all.
Yeah, just surprising.
All right, and then the last thing on my little rundown here, Scott, is Kerri Einarson ever going to see her kids again? two weeks already in the bubble. That she's got to come back. They're playing in the slams, then the women's worlds, then she's got to go to Scotland. There's some logistical questions here too. She's going to need an exemption from the government in Scotland to be able to go and play in this event. There's not enough time for what they've laid out in the quarantine of landing in Scotland and playing in the event for Kerri Einarson to get to the playoffs of the Women's World Championship and then also be eligible for the first couple days of the Mixed Doubles World Championship. So there's going to have to be some exemption there. Presumably being in the bowl will grant her that exception, but it's kind of an interesting logistical thing. But Kerri Einarson, the more she wins, the more she's going to play, and great rep to have. She has been fantastic in the bubble, but certainly she will have a well-earned break by the end of May for all the games that she's going to be playing coming up.
Yeah, for everybody that was complaining about not enough curling, she might be the only one left complaining about too much.
Yeah. Yeah, she's still got a lot of games to play. Good for her too. Very exciting, and certainly for someone in her professional life, certainly it's been an exhausting year for everybody in certainly her line of work. So I'm sure for her going and playing, while I'm sure physically and mentally exhausting, it's also a nice break from the toll that the past year has played professionally.
Yeah, and I'm sure her employer has mixed feelings, right, about this, because on the one hand, it's great that your employee is achieving so much, but on the other hand, like, hey, can you come back and get some work?
Yeah, and from all accounts, she's really good at it. Like,
yeah,
she's not there. Yeah. But congratulations to Kerri Einarson. And yes, it's only a joke. I know she's going to see her kids, of course.
Probably this week, right?
Yeah, I think she's going to go home and then come back for the slam. So she'll get a week out of the bubble.
Sean,
well earned.
I heard Brian Mudryk say the Grand Slams.
Yeah, he did.
I think I tweeted about it.
Yeah, he didn't get the memo. He did it a few times this week.
Huh.
Yeah. Everyone, yeah, people
Anyway.
were excited by it.
I thought it was interesting.
Only Vic doesn't say it.
Maybe he's got a personal beef.
Yeah, I honestly don't really blame him. So let's just say our picks real quick, Scott. For the week, you had Peterman and Gallant, who, and I've waited on this, who lost on the shot of the bubble. Like, okay, it's all well and good. Greg Smith, amazing shot. He's in the 1v1 Hall of Fame and well deserved. That round the clock shot was great. Kirk Myers, I don't know if he won 1v1, but he was in 1v1 for one of his shots that he made. And 1v1, for anyone who doesn't know, that's TSN, the Sports Center. They do the play of the day or the highlight of the night, and it goes into a fan vote for the previous day's highlight of the night, or whichever one was voted the day before as the best highlight. And after 7 days, you go into the Hall of Fame. So Greg Smith is in that Hall of Fame now. Myers was in the vote, so he was the highlight of the night one night. But the shot that Sahaydak made to win the game against Peterman and Gallant, it's never going to be in a 1v1. It's never going to be a highlight of the night because the skill and the touch doesn't translate as well to a quick highlight. You see a stone slowly come to a stop. But that was she had to touch the pinhole, and that's all she could do to win. Like, that's the only space that was available, and she made it. Like, a millimeter off, they lose the game, and she made it. That was unbelievable. 100% for me, the shot of the bubble so far.
Yeah, it reminded me, Sean, do you remember that like indoor lawn bowling clip where the guy rolled it and it was like way out there, and then somehow it like just came right in and like touched exactly where it needed to go? It was like that. It was so perfect. And like Jocelyn Peterman's shot before that was also amazing. Yeah. And
yeah, they both made it as, I mean, Peterman made it as good as you could.
Yeah.
And then
if she was any closer to the pin, there would have been a double.
Yeah.
Because the rocks would have been not frozen nose. And Brett said to her, yeah, you made it as good as you could. She's got the pin, but that's pretty tough.
Yep.
And then, she made it.
She made it.
Tough way for my pick to go out, Sean.
I think that's, it's tough, but also like, hey, if you're going to go out on that.
I guess.
That was one of the, just an absolute amazing shot. And then I had Val Sweeting and Mark Kennedy, who we talked about their exit a little earlier, to Lisa Weigel and John Epping in that round of 12. So neither of us had the skip team.
No, I don't think a lot of people would have, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, sweeping,
Yeah. I guess it's not that important.
Apparently not. So there you have it. That's a bit of a recap of the week that was in the curling bubble for the mixed doubles as well. So I guess some more macro level talk on mixed doubles. The next step, of course, is that they will be going, Gushue and Einarson, that is, to the mixed doubles world championship, which will be played in Aberdeen, Scotland, the week leading into what is the May long weekend here in Canada. The week before, what's it called in the United States?
Memorial Day.
Yes, the week before Memorial Day for our American friends. So I believe it ends on the 23rd of May, Scott?
12 to 23. That sounds right.
Yeah, so that'll be a lot of fun out in Aberdeen. Scotland, of course, Scotland lost a world championship last year to the pandemic. I guess the men's worlds were going to be in Edinburgh, I believe, but they were going to be in Scotland. So Scotland gets a world championship this year, and they'll get another world championship in the future to make up for last year. So that should be a lot of fun to watch that. And again, Olympic qualifications on the line out there in Aberdeen next month. But first, we got some more bubble action to get to. Of course, the Men's World Championship. And as a lot of people pointed out last night on Twitter, can Brendan Botcher? Which I kind of enjoyed. That's why punctuation matters, people, when you're making graphics. So Brendan Botcher, of course, representing Canada. First game against Bruce Mowat in Scotland. That should be a good one to kick things off. We will be back with you next week to do a preview of all the teams and what we expect to happen for the Men's World Championship. The schedule is available for the games. We're going to do some broom stacking during the event. Canada plays a couple 4 p.m. Eastern time games, so maybe after those, but we'll tweet those out and announce those, and then we'll talk about it on the show next week. So do join us for that, and subscribe to the channel so that you get it if you have not yet. Wherever it is you get your podcast, give us the likes, the ratings, all that good stuff. Helps other people find us and beat the algorithm. You can also find us on social media at Game of Stones Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Scott's there at Scott Lakes TV, and I am at the Sean Graham. And do head over to GameOfStonesPod.com for a Olympic qualification rundown that we did a little while back for the Canadian curling trials. You can also find all of our past episodes there and the merch that is available. Mine is en route to Ottawa, the hoodie and the toque that I bought. So I'm very excited to get out. Of course, the new merch proceeds going to the Sandra Schmerler Foundation, and the proceeds from the t-shirts will continue to go to Food Banks Canada. So check that out. And we're matching all that as well. So you can check out the merch over there at GameOfStonesPod.com. And if you want to let us know what you want to hear on the show, do feel free to get in touch. Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com. So Scott, this
John.
was a fun way to kick off the weekend.
Yeah, good time to kick off the weekend. Like you say, we'll be back with that men's preview next week. And until then, I'm going to sit back and relax, maybe drink a beer, and catch up on all the shows I missed while I've been watching curling.
Yeah. It's been a hectic week. What's first on your list?
I heard Superstore had its finale.
Yeah, had a 1 hour finale last night. So
I think I'll watch that. I think it's a sneaky, underrated show.
Great show. It got on Canadian Netflix in the last month, and was every time I go into Netflix, it was like, this is trending. Like, so people are discovering it, at least in Canada, on Netflix. And I got turned on to it by Aaron Boys and Megan Riley Boys a couple of years ago, and very much have enjoyed it. So I might do a full rewatch of it too after I watch the finale.
The man, the myth, the legend himself.
Yeah. So there you go. Well, enjoy that, Scott. Enjoy your weekend, everybody out there. Keep staying safe, doing the distancing, wearing your mask, all that fun stuff. And we'll talk to you again next week for a little more curling bubble action. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.